Chapter 3 Mrs. Witch Part 1 In the forest, evening was already beginning to fall, and they walked in silence. Charles and Fortinbras gambled on ahead. Calvin walked with Meg, his fingers barely touching her arm in a protective gesture. This had been the most impossible, the most confusing afternoon of my life, she thought. Yet I don't feel confused or upset anymore. I only feel happy. Why? Maybe we weren't meant to meet before this, Calvin said. I mean, I knew who you were in school and everything, but I didn't know you. But I'm glad we've met now, Meg. We're going to be friends, you know. I'm glad too, Meg whispered, and they were silent again. When they got back to the house, Mrs. Murray was still in the lab. She was watching a pale blue fluid move slowly through a tube from a beaker to a retort. Over a Bunsen burner bubbled a big earthenware dish of stew. "Don't tell Sandy and Denny's I'm cooking out here," she said. "They're always suspicious of a few chemicals may get in with the meat, but I had an experiment I wanted to stay with." "This is Calvin O'Keefe, Mother," Meg said. "Is there enough for him too? It smells super." "Hello, Calvin." Mrs. Murray shook hands with him. "Nice to meet you. We aren't having anything but stew tonight, but it's a good thick one." "Sounds wonderful to me," Calvin said. "May I use your phone so Mother'll know where I am?" "Of course. Show 'em where it is, will you please, Meg? I won't ask you to use the one out here, if you don't mind. I'd like to finish up this experiment." Meg led the way into the house. Charles Wallace and Fortinbras had gone ahead. Outdoors she could hear Sandy and Denny's hammering at the fort they were building in one of the maples. "This way." Meg went through the kitchen into the living room. "I don't know why I call her when I don't come home," Calvin said, his voice bitter. "She wouldn't notice." He sighed and dialed. "Ma," he said. "Oh, Hinky. Tell Ma I won't be home till late. Now don't forget, don't want to be locked out again." He hung up, looked up at Meg. "Do you know how lucky you are?" She smiled rather wryly. "Not most of the time." "A mother like that, a house like this. Gee, your mother's gorgeous. You should see my mother. She's had all of her upper teeth out, and Pop got a plate, but she won't wear it. And most days she doesn't even comb her hair. Not that it makes much difference when she does." He clenched his fist. "But I love her. It's the funny part of it. I love them all, and they don't give a hoot about me. Maybe that's why I call when I'm not going to be home, because I care. Nobody else does. You don't know how lucky you are to be loved." Meg said in a startled way, "I guess I never thought about that. Guess I just took it for granted." Calvin looked somber, then his enormous smile lit up in his face again. "Things are going to happen, Meg. Good things. I can feel it." He began wandering, still slowly, around the pleasant, if shabby, living room. He stopped before a picture on the piano of a small group of men standing together on a beach. "Who's this?" "Oh, a bunch of scientists." "Where?" Meg went over to the picture. "Cape Canaveral. This one's father." "Which?" "Here." "The one with glasses?" "Yep. The one who needs a haircut." Meg giggled, forgetting her worries in her pleasure at showing Calvin the picture. "His hair's sort of the same color as mine, but he keeps forgetting to have it cut. Mother usually ends up doing it for him. She bought clippers and stuff because he won't take the time to go to the barber." Calvin studied the picture. "I like him," he announced judiciously. "Looks kind of like Charles Wallace, doesn't he?" Meg laughed again. "When Charles Wallace was a baby, he looked exactly like father. It was really funny." Calvin continued to look at the picture. "He's not handsome or anything, but I like him." Meg was indignant. That means like annoyed again, remember? "He is too handsome." Calvin shook his head. "Nah, he's tall and skinny like me." "Well, I think you're handsome," Meg said. "Father's eyes are kind of like yours too, you know, really blue. Only you don't notice his as much because of the glasses." "Where is he now?" Meg stiffened, but she didn't have to answer because the door from the lab to the kitchen slammed, and Mrs. Murray came in, carrying a dish of stew. "Now," she called, "I'll finish this up properly on the stove. Have you done your homework, Meg?" "Not quite," Meg said, going back into the kitchen. Then I'm sure Calvin won't mind if you finish before dinner. Sure, go ahead. Calvin fished in his pocket and pulled out a wad of folded paper. As a matter of fact, I have some junk of mine to finish up. Math. It's the one thing I have a hard time keeping up in. I'm okay with anything to do with words, but I don't do as well with numbers. Mrs. Murray smiled. Why don't you get Meg to help you? But see, I'm several grades above Meg. Try asking her to help you with your math anyhow, Mrs. Murray suggested. Well, sure, Calvin said. Here, but it's pretty complicated. Meg smoothed out the paper and studied it. Do you care how you do it? She asked. I mean, can you work it out in your own way? Well, sure, as long as I understand how I get the answers right. Well, we have to do it their way. Now look, Calvin, don't you see how much easier it would be if you did it this way? And her pencil flew over the paper. Hey, Calvin said. Hey, I think I get it. Show me once more with another number. Again, Meg's pencil was busy. All you have to do is remember that every ordinary fraction can be converted into an infinite periodic decimal fraction. See? So 3/7 is 0.428571. This is the craziest family, Calvin grinned at her. I suppose I should stop being surprised by now, but you're supposed to be dumb in school, always being called up on the carpet. Oh, I am. The problem with Meg and math, Mrs. Murray said briskly, is that Meg and her father used to play games with numbers and she learned far too many shortcuts. And when they want her to do the problems the long way at school, she gets sullen and stubborn and sets up a fine mental block for herself. Are there any more morons like Meg and Charles around? Calvin asked. If so, I should meet more of them. It might also help if Meg's handwriting were legible, Mrs. Murray said. With a good deal of difficulty, I can usually decipher it, but I doubt very much of her teachers can or are willing to take the time. I'm planning on giving her a typewriter for Christmas. That may help. If I get anything right, nobody will believe it's me, Meg said. What's a megaparsec? Calvin asked. One of Father's nicknames for me, Meg said. It's also 3.26 million light years. What's E equals mc squared? Einstein's equation. What's E stand for? Energy. M, mass. C squared. The square of the velocity of light in centimeters per second. By what countries is Peru bounded? I haven't the faintest idea. I think it's in South America somewhere. What's the capital of New York? Well, New York City, of course. Who wrote Boswell's Life of Johnson? Oh, Calvin, I'm not any good at English. Calvin groaned and turned to Mrs. Murray. I see what you mean. Her, I wouldn't want to teach. She's a little one-sided, I grant you, Mrs. Murray said, though I blame her father and myself for that. She still enjoys playing with her doll's house, though. Mother! Meg shrieked in agony. Oh, darling, I'm sorry, Mrs. Murray said swiftly, but I'm sure Calvin understands what I mean. With a sudden enthusiastic gesture, Calvin flung his arms out wide, as though he were embracing Meg and her mother, the whole house. How did all of this happen? Isn't it wonderful? I feel as though I were just being born. I'm not alone anymore. Do you realize what this means? But you're good at basketball and things, Meg protested. You're good in school. Everybody likes you. For the most unimportant reasons, Calvin said. There hasn't been anybody in the whole world I could talk to. Sure, I can function on the same level as everybody else. Lean, learn how learn how to hold myself down, but it isn't me. Meg took a batch of forks from the drawer and turned them over and over, looking at them. I'm all confused again. So am I, Calvin said gaily. But now at least I know we're going somewhere. Meg was pleased and a little surprised when the twins were excited at having Calvin for supper. They knew more about his athletic record and were far more impressed by it than she. Calvin ate 5 bowls of stew, 3 saucers of jello, a dozen cookies, and then Charles Wallace insisted that Calvin take him up to bed and read to him. The twins who had finished their homework were allowed to watch half an hour of TV. Meg helped her mother with the dishes and then sat at the table and struggled with her homework, but she could not concentrate. Mother, are you upset? She asked suddenly. mu- um, Mrs. Murray looked up from a copy of an English scientific magazine through which she was leafing. For a moment she did not speak. Then, yes. Why? Again Mrs. Murray paused. She held her hands out and looked at them. They were long and strong and beautiful. She touched with the fingers of her right hand the broad gold band on the third finger of her left. I'm still quite a young woman, she said finally, though I realize that's difficult for you children to conceive, and I'm still very much in love with your father. I miss him dreadfully. And you think all this has something to do with father? I think it must have. But what? That I don't know, but it seems the only explanation. Do you think things always have an explanation? Yes, I believe that they do, but I think that with our human limitations, we're not always able to understand the explanations. But you see, Meg, just because we don't understand doesn't mean the explanation doesn't exist. I like to understand things, Meg said. We all do, but it isn't always possible. Charles Wallace understands more than the rest of us, doesn't he? Yes.